Hey guys, everyone practices scales. No one doubts that scales are useful, right? But to get the most out of your scales, you need to make sure you're practicing them with proper technique. All right, so just from my observations, here are my 5 most common errors people make in scales technique. Number 1, hovering fingers. Okay, so hovering fingers are when you don't actually have your fingers relaxed on the keys. You have them hovering above the keys like this. So you're playing your C major scale, but all your fingers are hovering. I mean, that was not intentional, me just missing that note. That is literally because when your fingers hover, they're too high. You are so much more likely to miss a note if your fingers are hovering. And it also indicates that there's a bit of tension in your wrists. And that's natural. I mean, no one's going to be super relaxed straight away. But you want to get into the habit of keeping all your fingers down on the keys at all times. Well, most of the time. So the trick to this, basically, when you practice, is to not let yourself carry on to the next note until you've got all your fingers down. So let's say you start like this. You're hovering, you put all your fingers down, like, okay, this looks good. So you press the first note. And when you press it, some of your fingers might flick up and start hovering like that. Don't let yourself carry on. Get them down. It takes a lot of willpower to... You'd think relaxing would come naturally. It doesn't. You have to practice being relaxed. So get your fingers down, and then you can press the next note. I forgot to do it, but then let's say some fingers stick up again. Dun, dun, oh, they've gone up. Get them down. Then you can play the next note. All right, now, as long as you do that, you might have to do that for a couple of weeks, be a bit diligent about it, but it will start to become natural. You will just naturally start to keep your fingers down. All right, number 2. Number 2 is flat fingers. So I see this quite a lot. Well, a lot. It's when you play with all your fingers flat like this. And it's, oh, look, there. So because my fingers are flat, there's like too much of a stretch there. I accidentally hit 2 notes instead of 1. Obviously not a good thing. But the main thing I would say about playing with flat fingers is that it makes it much harder to move around. You need space for your thumb to come under your other fingers, to turn under your other fingers. So basically, you want all your fingers to be nicely curved at all times. Which camera's better to show this? Nicely curved fingers. The kind of common advice I've heard a lot from other teachers is to imagine you're holding an orange in your hand and it will create that shape. So a bit of mime, very helpful, always. So you've got your orange, you put your hand on the piano, fingers are nice and curved. And that's how you want to keep them. It makes it very easy for your thumb to move around underneath them. And it's also just much easier to, get on those black keys. It's difficult to move up and down on the black keys if your fingers are flat. All right, so just be strict with yourself. While you're playing, just every so often say to yourself, are my fingers nicely curved? If they're not, get them into a nice shape. All right, that's that. Number 3. Number 3 is broken fingers. It's not as violent as it sounds. When we talk about broken fingers, we're talking about the way that if your fingers are loose and you press a note, they bend like that. I'll do it for the benefit of the other camera. There you go, my little finger. You can see it's lost that nice curved shape, and now it's sort of bending backwards. This is weak. I mean, it reduces the power you put into your playing, and you sort of also lose control. And I kind of noticed as well that something that can happen is if your fingers are bending backwards, like my thumb will actually hit my index finger as it goes under it. It's just kind of clumsy. It's not very graceful. You want to make sure that while you're playing with your curved fingers, your fingers are firm. I don't mean tense. So if I tense up my fingers, it's a bit like a claw, and that makes it like very difficult to move around. I don't mean tense. I just mean firm. So you're applying just enough sort of strength to keep your fingers in a nice form. All right, so that's broken fingers. Don't let your fingers break. Number 4. This sounds really obvious, but really common error that I see is people not landing on the black keys that they need to play. So let's go to D major. It's got 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. This is what I normally see. Someone will prepare their hand on the piano and they'll have their 3rd finger on F and they'll play D, E, then they'll move up to F sharp and there's no problem, right? You know, no one noticed. Then they come over and they land their 4th finger on C over here. And then just when they have to play C sharp, they quickly move up. And on the whole, everything is fine. It doesn't sound like there's any problem. Here's the thing. If you play like that, you're really, really limiting your speed. You will not be able to go fast if you're not landing on the appropriate black notes. Here's essentially what's happening. If you come over, thumb goes under your 3rd to G, and then your 4th lands on C and not C sharp, well, that just means you then have to move up. So that is 2 movements where there should only be 1 movement. You can kind of survive that when you're playing a scale. But what if you're playing like a really difficult piece of music and you know, there's thousands of movements, and what if every single movement, instead of 1 movement, you had to make 2 movements? It could be even worse. Like, what if you had to land on 3 black notes simultaneously and you go up to each of them 1 at a time as you need to play them? Then that's something like 4 movements instead of 1 movement. So make sure you know the black notes that are in the scale you're playing or in the piece that you're playing, and then whenever you move your hand, make sure you land on those notes. Yeah. So, you know, I can do that quite fast, and I definitely wouldn't be able to do that fast if I wasn't landing on the black notes. All right. Number 5, very common error I see, mainly in young students, is blurring the notes. So let's go back to C major, nice and simple. So you play C. Okay, no problem. And then you play D. You forget sometimes to release the previous note. And what happens is, okay, when I'm playing that slow, it doesn't really show it. But if you're playing faster, it starts to blur. And it's one of these things where it's really easy to let yourself get away with it when you're playing scales, because it doesn't sound that bad. It sounds a bit like using the sustain pedal. But when you're playing a real piece of music, that can sound really muddy really fast, like instantly, if you start blurring your notes. So here's what you're really aiming to do. You press 1 note. I'm actually going to go down so this camera can see better. So I'll descend. So we press our 1st note, and then you lift it, and then you press the next note. And then you lift it, and then you press the next note. That sounds really condescending, but it doesn't come naturally. If you want to play legato smoothly, well, you press your 1st note, and you don't lift it until you can hear the next note. So it's a fast movement. So that's a little bit different, because you're not going down, then up, then down, then up, then down. You're going down, and then the next note goes down at the same time that the 1st note comes up. Honestly, it's not very hard. You just have to go really slow and make sure you're doing it. So if you've been playing something and you think it's sounding a little bit muddy or not very clean, this honestly could be the reason. Play it very slowly and see if you are blurring your notes. It's going to make a big difference. It's going to make your playing sound a lot cleaner and nicer and clearer. Okay, so those are the 5 most common errors that I see. I'll just run through them. So we had hovering fingers. Don't hover, it's going to make you miss notes, and it's just not very graceful. Then we have flat fingers. That makes it difficult to move around. Again, not very graceful, and you're going to make mistakes because of it. Thirdly, we have broken fingers. That's when your fingers might be curved, but they're a bit loose and floppy, so you're not getting in as much power into playing as you could and control. Number 4, we had not landing on the black keys. Really, really common. That is obviously going to disrupt the flow in your playing. It's going to make hard music even harder. You want to minimize the movements you make, basically. And then we have number 5, blurred notes. It just makes your playing sound muddy. Very simple to fix as long as you pay attention to it and notice that you're doing it. And that is it. Those are my 5 most common errors I see on the piano. Avoid them and your playing will get a lot better really fast. Anyway, that's it. I hope that was helpful. If it was, give the video a like, because that's helpful to me. And I'll see you in the next one.